Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. And as you know, this morning we are on McDuff Lives 3. We're also on McDuff Lives 1, the original big channel with about 7,500 subscribers, which I've been afraid to broadcast on for about 6 months now because of two strikes that I had and one more, and we were sunk. But those have expired, so we're back on McDuff Lives 1 as well as McDuff Lives 3. If you're not subscribed to McDuff Lives 3, well, please do, because that's our basic broadcasting home right now. And that's where you'll get your subscribed notices when you ring the bell. So anyway, welcome. And also, we are live and committed to our Facebook page now. We're at McDuff Lives on Facebook. The audience at Facebook is growing very nicely. And thank you all for being with me on Facebook, and also those of you who watch the show after the live on recording and playback. So we are here, and Corky Goss, yes, you have started the eek for today, and here's some more eeks for you, my friend. That's our signature Osprey call that dates back to January of 2019, when we had our first charrette out on the Chesapeake Bay and Annapolis Harbor and the Chester River. Very interesting, and got to know a lot of very, very fine people. So, hi. Hello, everybody. Hello, Robert and Corky and Christy and Polly and Paticorn. And those of you who are just watching but not in the chat, good morning to you all. Well, just to straighten you out further on what happened on McDuff Lives 2, the strike that I got yesterday was actually not for the trio with David and Nick. I was confused because that was in the background of when they delivered the strike. It was, like that was my channel icon at the time. So I thought that was it, but it wasn't that. It was a September show with Mark Kulak of Housatonic Live. And that was struck for medical misinformation, policy claim. And I don't know if I'll bother to fight that one or not. I think sooner or later, all of my YouTube channels are going to be taken down if they keep up with this campaign of avoiding alternate theories as to what actually happened during COVID. But they can't stop everybody. I've just been alerted by Meg, who sends out a very useful email blast once a day, and thank you, Meg, for that. Let's see, or was it someone else? I'm sorry. Anyway, I got a link to Chris Martinson's um, most recent publication, and it's he has a paid site, but this is a free one, and I've never seen him before, but he put together a very, very effective program over the past 2 days ago that I just saw, and I think you should see it too. I'll link to it after the show. It's on my Twitter, and he really goes through a lot of smoking gun emails that were suppressed and blacked out the first time. And it's Fauci and Collins and Daszak and the usual suspects, but a real key tie-in to the Wellcome Trust and this man named Jeremy Farrar, Farrar, and others who seem to be more into marketing than they are into public health safety issues. Very good show. And, it fits right in with what Mark and Nick and many others are doing. So I think it's a winner. Hello, David Underdown, and thank you for joining us this morning. Carlos Ayaga, bienvenido. So nice to have you with us, Carlos, and all the best to you. It happens, and Corky, Stanley, and let's see, narwhal Corky is a unicorn fish. Uh-oh. Okay, let's look out for the unicorns. Faction and fiction. Nice. Well, the topics of the week, I still think the most important show is the one with Nick and David because of the connection that I now have with the investigation into hepatitis B and hepatitis B vaccine research, experimentation, guinea pigs, human guinea pigs, using primate diseases to see what will happen if you put them into humans, and combining all these different sequences of genetic material from different um, animal pathogens, which ultimately leads up to them finding a way to insert those into a human body, a human cell, in such a way that it will live and continue to do its pathogenic thing. And that's what I think from Chris Martinson is very apparent, that they did do that. They've gone into that, and as Marcus said, it looks very much like it must have been a very highly um, militarized environment to create something like that. So we're still looking, but I think that it's the jig is up, unless they pull some kind of a huge event, another black swan event, and I think we're gonna find that the origin of these mysterious coronaviruses may not be so far away. It's just that they didn't want to tell us, and it has to do with this crazy research. And I agree with Chris Martinson that we can't blame left or right for this. We have to just be looking for true or false, fact or fiction. Corky, you want to know if you can mention chimeras. Yes, you can mention chimeras, but if you do that, then somebody's going to ask me to sing the unicorn song, and I don't know if I want to do that right now. Um, satyrs, maybe. The Capricorn goat. Um, what would you like to mention about chimeras? Hey, Kathy Sue's here. Hi, Kathy. Great to have you here. Well, unless anybody has any topics, I'm going to continue a little bit on my investigation of Philip Drew, Administrator, the little novel written by or under the name of Edward M. House in 1912. 1912, a lot of interesting things were going on. The Titanic, right? Jekyll Island, the Well, just look at a historical event summary for 1912, and you'll see what I mean. There's a lot of the stuff that we are facing now was getting started then in various ways. But 1912 is when Colonel House, the advisor to Woodrow Wilson, writes and publishes anonymously this book, and then has the book praised in Congress by a friendly congressman, and it becomes famous and people read it. So yesterday I was describing how much I really do like this character, Philip Drew, because he is epitomizing the Southern genteel lifestyle that I think, an idealistic South may still have in its heart. But sadly, that idealism is just completely um, scarred and made unwhole by the scars of racism and this existing belief that race matters. That was the main problem, I think, with the idea that Jefferson and the Southerners were, in fact, Democrats. Well, they were within the white race in their own idea. And that's a sad, sad thing that we have not faced and haven't overcome because it is part of one of the great institutional groups that we have, the agrarians, Southern westward ho, um, Pacific Empire with the expansion into Hawaii and the islands, Philippines, etc., that went on in the 19th century versus the European side, which is the Anglo-Saxon WASP, Wall Street, New England, Boston, you know, the Brahmins, the elites, which are basically considering themselves to be part of the aristocracy of England or Great Britain. And those people are pursuing a different empire from the empire that the Western looking people, like MacArthur, for instance, um, are looking at. The MacArthur's are looking at an American empire and to develop it under American rules, and the Western, I'm sorry, and the Wall Street, Sullivan and Cromwell types are looking to London and to develop their empire under London rules. And these two different empires are still clashing away, in my opinion. Let's see, the NATO, Atlantic or NATO group. Yes, that's right. And again, this is World War II type of of talk of that era and the 50s. But by now, I think that these two groups have made a way to kind of work together and just screw the rest of us. The elites of both of those quasi empires, uh, like the ones that Sean Ross talks about on his Jure channel, where he defines one empire as the uh, top-down empire and the other empire as the oligarchical horizontal empire. And those two come together and work together through institutions like Freemasonry and the uh, orders of the British Empire, the Knights of the Garter, etc. And also then you have your papal knights and your old European nobility, which you would align up really with the vertical rule, except for within there are the more Protestant uh, oligarchical types who may side with one or the other. Nevertheless, I think we have still a very, very stark division between visions of the future. And neither one of them is a democratic republic. In one case, you have a race-based empire that is going to just take and expand to the west, and in the other case, you have another race-based empire, but it's going to ostensibly be multicultural, ostensibly bring in servitors, to use Professor Hamamoto's great term, to serve the interests of the rulers, the ones at the top, which are generally still of that superior, self-appointed white race. So that's where I think I stand, is outside of either group. And I want to just emphasize how important the Constitution is, in that it's being the first country founded upon human rights of the citizens, the Bill of Rights. And that is what we have to hang on to, even though, yes, we've had coups. Yes, we had uh, JFK assassinated. Yes, every government since then has been part of the coup mechanism and not a freely elected democratic government. And I include everybody from Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan to uh, Obama and Trump. They've all been part of the coup regime that started, behind the scenes, has probably been there a long time, but went active, you know, on November 22nd, 1963, and they've held the reins of power ever since. Sure, they fight back and forth, Republican and Democrat, but that's just that's just for show. The control is already shared, and you can see it as more and more people become disaffected with voting. I see that in a number of my friends' blogs that, why vote? Why should I vote? Just supporting an evil system. Well, I just say that if you don't vote, then you're never going to win. And if you don't vote, then the system gradually is just going to fall apart. And if that's what you want, then I say, you better start stocking up on ammunition and make your make your plans for the chaos that will follow. Because hungry people are not going to be merciful, after 4 or 5 days of not eating. You know, if the trucks don't arrive in the cities to feed the people are going to start going out and taking the food somewhere. And I don't see anything stopping that except for martial law. And you don't want that, do you? So my side of it is stick with the program, force them to improve the system, get paper ballots back with community members being the election judges. Let the ballots be turned in by communities to counties to states in the hands of people that are entrusted and public servants, and with representatives from the press and representatives from all uh, legitimate candidates to observe all of the transfers of these ballots until they reach the final destination, where a transparent counting process will be done. And I don't think it's impossible, but I do think that one thing that's impossible is to be able to rely on a computer to do an honest tally, because everybody knows these digital machines can be tampered with, and the whole programs can be set up so that they have back doors in them. And yes, organized crime is going to get involved in that. If there's money to be made by blackmailing or switching some votes or anything that they can do, sure, you have to expect criminals to take advantage of a weak system. And they do. Not just criminals, foreign governments, banks, political parties. Well, who else? Spooks, right? The intelligence agencies. Yeah, that's where I think, you can see the thumb being put down on the scale. It's 99%, in my opinion, going to be the intelligence agencies that are doing it. And if we don't stop them, we will not have ever a democratic republic. But if we just check out and avoid voting entirely, where does that lead? You know, People talk about the agora and the free marketplace, and I've got carrots and you've got peas, and I'll trade you some carrots for your peas. It's mystical fantasy, you know. The technological, financial, military, police powers are overwhelming. And to think that you can just go out and hang out a sign and say, I'm a free individual and I would like to trade, my turnips for your cabbage, is not going to happen. All right. So I was going to get back to Philip Drew, but let me check and see what you guys are thinking of. Was A&P the merger? A&P was a great grocery store chain when I was growing up, and I think they're still somewhere. But anyway, I'll tell you a little anecdote. When I was working in Williamsburg, Virginia, as I worked through college and afterwards at the Williamsburg Lodge, um, I had the privilege of being like the only white waiter on the staff for most of the time, and the other waiters and waitresses were a lot of fun. They were really, really funny. But anyway, Lucille, who was kind of like my mentor, she was like the waitress that taught me how to, how to work. And so anyway, she was kind of nice to me. And I just heard her one day. I came in and she was talking to a friend of hers, and she said, Lord, I went to the James Brown concert last night. He had on those tight sequin pants and he had more meat than the A&P. Uh, I'll never forget that. More meat than the A&P. What a mess. Okay. Science and technology, 3 steps forward, 4 steps back. Can't leave well enough alone. Always trying for better, faster, stronger. Yeah. Um, I agree with that, but I also, think unfortunately, science and technology have been perverted to the use of these political factions and imperial powers. And we don't get pure science and we don't get honest technological solutions. We just get what they're willing to share with us, and we have to pay for it. And I think it's a shame. Okay, Corky says cynocephali, the dog-headed people legend. Yeah, I think that the dog-headed person to me is Set, the devil of the Isis, Horus, and Set trio from Egypt. That's the only dog-headed people legend I know, the Egyptian ones. Polly Walnut says hit the like button. I agree. Without people hitting the like button, the channel does not get advanced in the search engine. So it's how they judge whether people like me or not, is whether they hit the like button. So if you like me, give me a tap on the like button. For free reign, our votes are evidence of intent to exact representation. Votes are evidence when elections are actually investigated. Why Brzezinski MSM has created faux political capital, there is still legitimate policy, I guess, or politics. Yeah, that's why I just don't watch MSM anymore because it's all fake. It's all, drama and, some tragic story or again, the hyperbole about, the danger of conspiracy theory. Oh no, you're a conspiracy theorist, because really they have a political agenda, and mainly what their agenda is to show that on January 6th there was a armed rebellion against the United States, an insurrection. And as long as they keep beating on that, if that's what they want, they're going to keep on trying to convince people, even though it's been, 3 years now and nobody's changed their mind on January 6th. I don't think anybody's going to, but they make a lot of political money off of selling that story, don't they? Hey, Coach. First time in months, close to a year, you got a live stream notification. You know why that is because my channel, McDuff Lives One, got struck back in May of this year. And because of that, I moved to McDuff Lives 2. And now McDuff Lives 2 has gotten struck. So I'm back on McDuff Lives 3. And I thought I'd take a chance and broadcast today for the first time in about 6 or 7 months on McDuff Lives One. And so I'm glad you pointed that out, Coach, that a lot of people did not know that I moved. And, it is very important that if you want to follow me, you have to subscribe to all three channels because you never know when one's going to get hit, as we got hit yesterday on McDuff Lives 2. So subscribe to McDuff Lives 1, McDuff Lives 2, and McDuff Lives 3, and then you'll be always in the loop with us here at McDuff Lives. And of course, subscribe to us on Facebook at McDuff Lives there, building a nice new audience over there. And I want to do more interaction with you guys as soon as I can. Looking forward to a lot of changes here at McDuff Lives. We're proud with Catherine, our great jumping mouse, helping us with production. We are getting ready to launch a brand new website. It will be called McDuff Lives and McDuffLives.com. We're hoping to launch on Monday. If not, it'll be shortly after that. And the real exciting news, the drum roll, please. We will be embedded on our own website. That's right. We will be broadcasting from our own website. So when we get set up, we will have a link to our show that you won't need to go to YouTube. You won't need to go to BitChute or Rumble or Odyssey or anywhere at all. You just go to McDuffLives.com and that's where we'll be. Now, we are not going to drop our presence on YouTube, but we're going to cut it back so that we don't take chances like losing our channel again and keep our censorable material to ourselves, to among us within the community at McDuffLives.com. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Drummer, my sweet wife, for helping and hopefully doing a little bit of production with we when we get started on that. She's producing already. She's producing our podcasts at McDuff Lives Podcast, and you can find us there on Spotify and all of the major podcast services. All right, that's the news. We're excited about getting off of YouTube and having our own permanent home for McDuff Lives at McDuffLives.com. Yeah, the Egyptians, they were into chimeras. It happens. Well, that's what I was just thinking, certainly if they can get us to rise up, if they can get us to like the January 6th crowd, suppose that the January 6th crowd was armed or was, tagged with some Proud Boys that are armed, some of the feds that pretend to be libertarians or pretend to be progressives or pretend to be, populists, that are really agents provocateur who, you know, act like they're leading us, but they're really just doing their own thing, and we're not following these guys. I don't think anybody followed those guys until the cops started pulling down the barriers and waving people in, as if, yeah, Nancy Pelosi invites you into her Congress. Come on in. So nobody's ever going to agree on what happened on January 6th. The media has completely obliterated our access generally to the truth. I know people that were there, and I have a very firm opinion of what happened, and it certainly was not an insurrection. Oh, I didn't know about that. Well, anything Detroit based is very important to us because I think we're going to make Detroit the capital of the American empire when we finally pull the sheet off of it and everybody can see this great empire that's been built. It's probably still headquartered in New York, in Detroit. Hey, Sierra, thank you for this. Make sure your security certificates for the future websites alert mouse about Osprey. Here's the frustrating thing about that is that to get a security certificate through that particular through WordPress turned out to be a huge headache, and we never got it done. And perhaps that's because we don't have a certain expertise, but we tried. And we tried hard to get that certificate. If you go to screamingospreys.com now, you may have to reload it because for that reason that without a security certificate, a lot of browsers will say, hey, this is not secure or something like that. So we will take care of that when we launch our new site. And thank you very much the for the alert. We're aware of the problem, like I say, but we don't have anybody that's up to speed on to how to make sure that you get those certificates. So, but we'll think about that over the weekend. And again, thank you. Okay, Sierra, this is not the Hunley checking in. Are you referring to the great Confederate submarine, the Hunley? Um, Perhaps you are. You know, the submarine that was man powered. They had like cranks. I don't know if it was like bicycle wheels or pedals, or was it hand cranks, but a bunch of guys in a iron casket going under the water. Didn't turn out too well. Yeah, that's kind of a memorable moment, isn't it, with her tearing up President Trump's speech. I think it was during the State of the Union, if I remember. It was pretty sick way, to you have to support the opposition, when they win. If you don't, then sooner or later they pull the country down. It's this kind of antics. It plays right into what they want. They want us to have that war that actually was contemplated by Philip Drew, administrator, in the book I've been sharing some with you. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of Philip Drew Administrator just because it's interesting to me to continue with where we were. I'll remind you that Philip Drew had gotten some alkaline in his eyes, and he ends up that he can hardly see. He goes to New York and with his companion, Gloria, and Gloria uh, becomes very, very emotionally upset at poverty. And they encounter a family called the Turners, in which a lot of tragedies happen. And, they worked hard and they saved their money. And then, the economy went south and they went bankrupt and the poor guy died. And then she's, anyway, destitute and desperate. And so the idea that Gloria comes up with is to join one of the settlement houses. Now, you've heard of settlement houses, especially Jane Addams in Chicago, and the idea of these generally white, well-off people, women generally, with money, going and living in the rough part of town and making a house, a settlement house where people who are, down on their luck, uh, in bad shape, uh, no assets, no, desperate, that they can come and get some relief. And that settlement house movement, of course, is real and it became very, very important and leads into lots of interesting connections, including Margaret Sanger and, uh, women's rights and also some of the other darker stuff that we've talked about elsewhere. Anyway, so she's all excited about the settlement movement, and they start helping out with the settlement movement in New York. Um, Now her brother is now back in the picture, and they are talking. And this is chapter 6. It's called "The Prophet of a New Day." If you recall, Gloria said that she thought that Philip Drew might well be a prophet. Philip and Mr. Strawn often discussed the mental and moral upheaval that was now generally in evidence. Well, we have that, don't we? Mental and moral upheaval. What is to be the outcome, Philip? Said Mr. Strawn. I know that things are not as they should be, but how can there be a more even distribution of wealth without lessening the efficiency of the strong, able, and energetic men, and without making mendicants of the indolent and improvident? If we had pure socialism, we could never get the highest endeavor out of anyone, for it would seem not worthwhile to do more than the average. The race would then go backward instead of lifting itself higher by the insistent desire to excel and to reap the rich reward that comes with success. Okay, this is Gloria's brother, uh, who is putting out, the common problem with socialism's 1912, right? And you're talking about um, what the world's like in 1920. And they're looking at socialism as, a lot of people are talking about it. But look what happens if you go with socialism. You end up with people that are not motivated, people that are not going to do more than average, and, put, put little effort into punching the clock and getting the daily work done because they're not invested in the process. They don't see the hope of being personally successful. So they just marking their time. And it's a tragedy to think of the race going into that backward mode. The race meaning exactly who, Mr. Colonel House, did you mean by the race? The human race or the white race? Not sure. I'm not sure. Now, his answer. In the past, Mr. Strawn, your contention would be unanswerable, but the moral tone and thought of the world is changing. You take it for granted that a man must have in sight some material reward in order to bring forth the best there is within him. I believe that mankind is awakening to the fact that material compensation is far less to be desired than spiritual compensation. This feeling will grow. It is growing. And when it comes to full fruition, the world will find but little difficulty in attaining a certain measure of altruism. I agree with you that this much to be desired state of society cannot be altogether reached by laws, however drastic. Socialism, as dreamed of by Karl Marx, cannot be entirely brought about by a comprehensive system of state ownership and by the leveling of wealth. If that were done without a spiritual leavening, the result would be largely as you suggest. Unquote. See why I like Philip Drew? Because he says you got to have a spiritual side of life. You can't just be a bean counter, and you can't just value things for what you can see, taste, smell, or sell for. You have to actually engage in the more spiritual side of life, and we need to have a spiritual what a reawakening of some kind. And so the discussion ran, Strawn the embodiment of the old order of thought and habit, and Philip the apostle of the new. And Gloria listened and felt that in Philip a new force had arisen. She likened him to a young eagle who, soaring high above a slumbering world, sees first the gleaming rays of that onrushing sun that is soon to make another day. Wow. Well, I'm going to stop reading there just to get back and see if that has generated any ideas in the chat room. They want us all on CBDC. Yeah, that's a big thing going on right now. I haven't done a show on that. Perhaps I should, but I'm not an expert, and I've got a lot on my plate to try to convey the best I can in my shows. I work on weather modification, but I don't do many shows on it because I haven't got the big enough idea of how to help with that problem. I have been looking at Jim Lee lately on YouTube. I think he does a very, very good job explaining HARP and weather modification. And you know, uh, my other favorite for that is One Pacific Redwood, who is a weatherman who explains the barometer charts and uh, the low pressure, high pressure, and then he shows you how the radar beams come in and mix things up and cut through storms. Satellite beams, yeah, it gets into satellite beams. And if you don't want to go there, don't. But you know, you won't understand what's going on until you start looking into serious reporting on weather modification. I mean, our sky this morning was covered with contrails that have just spread and spread and spread, and you know how they spread out into these thin lines. And you think, water doesn't spread out into thin lines. That's particles. That's something. It's not just cloud material. There's something in there that keeps it in lines or in there, those feather-like patterns. Like you ever see one that looks like a great big feather that has a spine down the middle, and then uh, each side has like a mirror image of the other side, like a feather, spreading out as it falls. It gets wider and wider, and you see it expand. Some kind of stuff in there, in my opinion, got to be. And that's part of, the secret part of what's going on in our world. I will be having Alina Freeland back on the show. Yay. She'll be back on December 16th. So look forward to that and catch up with her on the ionized sky and the planet lockdown. Okay, so thank you, Corky. Professor Hamamoto will have Lena Pooh back as well. That's good. I was not able to really grasp into what she was saying. We had two or three shows back, I mean, maybe 2 years ago. She's an expert in 5G and what they're doing in classrooms. She has children, and she's right on top of a lot of uh, the concerns about this intense and more intense microwave radiation that is, being beamed in directly into our schools, directly into our classrooms, and uh, very concerned and alert. Um, and so, she has written some things that I think are helpful about how to deal with the legal system in fighting against 5G. So Lena Pooh, and I think she's got a lot of good stuff to share. And I wish I could, just participate with everybody. But anyway, Elena Freeland will be back, and that will be a great show. And be sure and watch Professor Hamamoto's show with Lena Pooh when that is scheduled. Hey, Free Rain, yeah, a very flat plume formation of the Northern Maryland Delaware border and developed tight waves, and it had a dark center. You see those tight waves? I've been, I've, you should, I joust with NOAA and a couple of the other, government weather sites because they use the term gravity waves to describe these really obviously parallel, it must be electromagnetic uh, force waves of some kind because they are sine waves that are exactly parallel to each other. And so they go back and forth with their silly theories. The one that really got to me was when they called them gravity waves, because, gravity doesn't make waves. Gravity is a constant. So what are you talking about? And they said, well, it's not really gravity. It's the difference between pressure when it goes over a mountain and into the valley and over the mountain, and then it kind of makes this kind of a standing wave. That's called that. I said, well, all right, then call it a mountain generated standing wave, but don't call it gravity waves. Are they trying to make life even more confusing? You know, contradicting, the science that we learn in school, putting absurd labels on things. Yeah, they are. So I fight them on that. And so yesterday, I saw one of their, uh, satellite shots of looking down at North America. And sure, it had those waves all over it, those, parallel sine waves. I mean, these things cover massive areas like multi states, and they're so obvious that they're not natural. They're not. They didn't, nature doesn't make straight lines and 90-degree corners, and nor does it make parallel sine waves out of moisture in the air. Well, silica dust from fracking, I don't think it gets up into the atmosphere like that. I think what we're talking about is stuff that's either part of the combustion process or being dropped from higher planes, or somehow um, delivered into the upper atmosphere. But I don't think that fracking is the explanation for what we see when these long lines of contrails just descend and descend and descend and spread and spread and spread and end up looking more like particulate matter than anything resembling a cloud. Gravity in the vacuum. Indeed. Harp systems. Yeah, I think, that's complicated. And look at Jim Lee on harp because he does explain it to my satisfaction. It's not just one phased array of radar that's beamed into a certain area of the sky. They actually have to go up higher into like the stratosphere or somewhere up there and manipulate some sky up there, and then that causes waves that occur in the lower atmosphere. It's fascinating and hard to follow, but you know that's why it wasn't invented until what, the 1970s or so. Cube clouds. Oh, that's bad. I haven't seen one of those yet. Got a new book in the mail today. It's Challenging Secret Government, the post-Watergate investigations of the CIA and FBI. This is the church committee and things like that. I was recommended. I didn't know about this book, and one of my subscribers on Twitter said I have to have it. So I have it now. Thanks again to you all for the Patreon contributions. Had a new Patreon join yesterday, and it's always nice to uh, see that happen. My Patreon button is over at screamingospreys.com, and let's see what else is in here. Oh, there's a note in here from whoever's book this was previously about Fletcher Prouty and the secret team. Philip David Atlee and Maurice Bishop, Colonel Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah, I've shown you my little card from Fort Bragg where my dad went to a Army Special Warfare School class and got this little wallet ID card that he had graduated from it. That was in 1965. Yeah, he was right on the inside of all the special operations, and of course we didn't know that when we were growing up. But now we know it, and what a story. McDuff lives. If you haven't got a copy of the book, it's available on Kindle for $9.99, and the the paperback is $20. It's only 75 pages long, but that's an awful lot of work that went into it, and so that's where the price is. I ought to do a fundraiser and give some away sometime soon. Maybe when we launch the new website, that's a good thing to do. Um, and I guess that's all I have for today. So I look for, yeah, David Atlee Phillips, right? Yeah, one of those CIA spooks in the 60s and 70s. Diane Sayre will be with me this week on December the 6th. She is not quitting. She is now going against Gildebrand in New York for the 2024 Senate seat in New York. And I certainly want to give her whatever support I can and let the world start really taking a good look at the Senate seats in New York and how they've been used and abused. Um, well, since Hillary, if not before, of course before as well. But this current crop of corruption needs to be cleaned out, and I think Diane is making the best shot at it that I've seen. So anyway, we'll talk to her some more on December the 6th, and we will see you guys next week. hopefully from a new website.